Welcome to Stacking the Box podcast with Iain MacMillan and Sterling Holmes. I am Sterling Holmes. Iain, looks like you figured your ball situation out back there.
Yeah, the empty shelf of balls wasn't looking good, so I just tossed in some normal balls. Some of them have some scuff marks on them, but now I don't have an empty shelf, and I will slowly replace them with logo balls as I get to visit more golf courses throughout the years. So no more empty shelf.
Iain joined the pregame set list, like little rundown show, a little late today, and I'm fully convinced he goes, "Oh shit, it's because Sterling's gonna call me out." So he went to the garage, got some balls out of his golf bag, started fishing around there, and threw them up there.
Yeah, you weren't the only one to bring up the empty shelf the past couple of weeks, so I had to address it. It has been addressed. I also have a jackhammer outside my window today, so I'll mute myself whenever I'm talking. This is living in New York. This is the New York lifestyle, baby.
Under construction since 1776. But let's get into it. A lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Saquon. We're going to talk about Frank Clark. We're going to talk about this news that just came out about Stefon Diggs. We're going to talk about our defensive positional power rankings. But I want to start with Stefon Diggs' story. It's just breaking right now, and it's breaking from The Athletic and the Bills beat reporter for The Athletic. Joe, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm sorry. I'm about to butcher your name. Your first name's Joe. Easy to pronounce. Last name, Buscaglia. B-U-S-C-A-G-L-I-A. All right?
Buscaglia.
There we go. Apparently, Bills head coach Sean McDermott says wide receiver Stefon Diggs is not in attendance for mandatory minicamp. And McDermott went on to say he's very concerned. According to Joe, he says McDermott wouldn't go any further into the situation, whether it was an excused absence. So not good for Stefon Diggs, not good for Bills fans.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not good for Bills fans because they don't even have a wide receiver number 2 in that roster. So if they don't figure this issue out with Stefon Diggs, the Bills are toast. They can't win without any wide receivers. They aren't the Chiefs who were able to do it last year, but even the Chiefs obviously had Travis Kelce. So I'm more concerned for Bills and Bills fans because I feel bad for Bills fan base. I always have. They deserve a Super Bowl. They lost 4 straight. And now with the team that they haven't been able to even get to the Super Bowl. And now their star wide receiver is not showing up to minicamp. Things are bad in Buffalo, and I feel for that fan base. So they got to figure it out.
We will follow this as it continues to progress. We have no idea if it's excused or not. But again, when you hear a head coach say very concerned, odds are that means money's involved. Odds are it means a new contract is involved, or they don't see eye to eye. Again, not good for Stefon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills. But let's get into Frank Clark to the Broncos. Frank Clark, Super Bowl champion, multiple-time Super Bowl champion with the Kansas City Chiefs, heading to the AFC West arch rival Denver Broncos. What do you make of this?
It makes me giddy because once again, I think it was just last week we talked about this, Sterling. Anytime there's a player that's a free agent, especially a player that's on the Chiefs, you said it last week. He wants to come home. He wants to come play for the Chiefs. So nothing brought a smile on my face more than seeing that he not only left the Chiefs, but went to an AFC West rival. I thought everyone wanted to play for Kansas City. What happened here?
Hey, I'm not everyone wants to play for Kansas City type of guy. I'm not sitting here saying DeAndre. I'm not going to sit here and tell you DeAndre Hopkins is coming to Kansas City and take less money. I'm not on that train. Frank Clark was different. I didn't think he had a market. That's the difference. I didn't think Frank Clark had a market. I thought he was going to be in the Carlos Dunlap 1 year, $3 million type range. Again, the majority of this offseason, I said the best landing spot's probably a team in Florida. I thought Jacksonville was a good chance, and I thought Miami was a good chance. He decided to go to Denver. He thinks he's Neil Smith. For Iain, if you don't know who Neil Smith is, he was in the Chiefs Ring of Honor, right? Phenomenal edge rusher for Kansas City with Derek Thomas. He ended up going to Denver, and then he won a couple Super Bowls with Denver. But I don't think Frank Clark has that left in the tank. I don't think the Chiefs are going to offer him near the $5.5 million guaranteed, up to $7.5 million guaranteed in incentives. End of the day, I'm sitting here saying, good for you, Frank. That's good money.
So now it's not that Frank didn't want to come back. It's that the Chiefs actually just didn't want him.
Not for that price, no.
All right.
Well, if you're going to be a veteran situational edge rusher, you're going to play what, 30% of the snaps. You're not paying that guy $5.5 million up to $7.5 million. They got the $3 million that was given out to Carlos Dunlap last year. They did it before when they traded for Melvin Ingram for a 6th rounder. They did it the year before, prior to that, with Terrell Suggs, which they traded for it mid-season. If you're going to use this veteran edge rusher, which at this point the Chiefs were going to use Frank Clark in that way, you're not giving that guy $5.5+ million. It makes no sense.
All right. I mean, yeah, you're probably right. So you think he just went to the Broncos for the money?
I think he probably got a good chunk more. Again, if we're using Carlos Dunlap as a jumping off point, they tried to restructure Frank Clark's deal. Frank Clark said no. He was already on the hook for a good chunk of change in Kansas City as a dead cap hit. Doesn't matter. He didn't want to restructure. He thought he might be able to get more in the open market. Looks like he did. He's only 29 years old, which is crazy because you think he's 33, 34. He's 29. Part of me was a little surprised no team offered a 2-year deal, and maybe he got offered a 2-year deal by a really bad team. We probably won't know that. But again, $5.5 million is going to be more than what the Chiefs were willing to offer. I'm happy for Frank Clark. It is a little befuddling. He's going to the AFC Denver Broncos. They're rivals, but I don't think that he really makes the Broncos a contender. The Broncos already had a good defense. The defense wasn't the issue. It's going to come down to Russell Wilson. If they think that bringing in a championship caliber player helps the overall locker room, then go for it. But you already have that with Russell Wilson as your quarterback. So for Denver, I'm a little perplexed why this was I guess, frankly, why this deal was given out.
Yeah, like you said, defense wasn't the issue last year. So this is not going to make a difference for the Broncos much. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Good for him.
I will say maybe this is because the Broncos have not beaten the Kansas City Chiefs since 2015. At some point, you're like, you know what? I don't care what we do. I don't care if we only win 4 games. We're going to try and beat the Chiefs for the first time in 8+ years. That's the only logical explanation now.
Maybe they brought him in just to give some inside tips and some insider information to beat the Chiefs. That would be a shame.
Let's switch gears and talk Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was asked at his AMPT football camp how optimistic he was about getting a long-term deal from the New York Giants. He paused, seemingly unsure of the appropriate answer, went on to say, I don't know. I don't know. So he is franchise tagged, but he is not signed said franchise tag. Because he's not signed the franchise tag, he won't, and he's not allowed to go to training camp. So apparently the Giants had an offer out to Barkley earlier this year that would have been close to $14 million per season, but Barkley and his team turned it down. Now, Barkley, in his own regard, said he's not trying to become the highest paid running back. He's not trying to reset the market, but I don't know what that $14 million per year contract actually looked like. We don't have legitimate numbers. It's a lot of he said, right? Or he said, she said. So it's going to be difficult to actually, what was substantial about that contract? How much was guaranteed? How much of it was just fluff? We won't know. But I will say right now, not looking good for Saquon and not looking good for the Giants.
Yeah, I think this says something about the bigger picture of running backs right now, because they're in a very weird situation where owners and general managers aren't really valuing them, or at least not past their first contract. They figure rookie contracts are the way to go for running backs. After the rookie contract, dump them and you can get the next another rookie running back in the 3rd round. For a lot cheaper, that's right around the same skill level. So running backs as a whole now don't have a long shelf life, don't generally get signed to big contracts, and don't make a lot of money. But if we're talking about a position that deserves money, maybe not for the results, but a few positions take the beating that running backs take. Getting the ball time after time, running into defensive linemen, running into linebackers, just getting teed off on time and time again. Running backs, for the amount of hits that they take to their head and for health reasons and for long-term health reasons, should be getting a ton of money. But now the market has kind of turned sour on them. So running backs as a whole need to kind of start standing up for themselves. Austin Eckler did it for him and then try to do it, but then at the end he just kind of ended up taking whatever money he got. there's only a couple of running backs who actually can stand up for themselves and try to get long-term deals. And Saquon Barkley is probably one of 3-4 guys in the NFL who can do it. So good for him. I don't know what happens because there's rumors that they might sit out this year. I don't know. Like if you get franchise tag, but you don't sign it and then you sit out the next year, where does that leave you the next offseason? I don't know. But yeah, I support him. I don't think it's about necessarily the amount of money for him. It seems like it's more about contract length because of what's been happening to running backs in the NFL over the past few years.
Yeah, when Barkley was asked about the potential of sitting out, he said he will at least contemplate sitting out this season. That comes up in conversation if something doesn't get done by July 17th, who also specified that's not something he's thought much about. He also wanted to say, me getting tagged, was I upset about it? Nobody wants to get tagged. To sit here and say I was frustrated, I was mad, I was upset. What really got me upset was the stories that got leaked out and how misleading and untruthful they were. They were trying to paint a narrative of me, paint a picture of me that's not even true. Trying to negotiate a new contract has been an eye-opening process, coming to the reality that this is just a business. So he understands his value. I'm with you. The running back market is down, and Barkley actually went on in this interview to say he understands and is aware of the current situation where the running back market is at. But he did go on to say he's been part of the winning culture change, the difference in getting wins with the New York Giants. I think it's tough to disagree when he is such a, not just a good running back, but a good receiving running back. And that's what you really have to look for in today's NFL. Now, again, you saw Carolina get burned by the Christian McCaffrey contract, right? You see the Saints and Alvin Kamara. You look around at all these running backs, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley. You don't know when that fall-off's going to happen, especially a running back with a litany of injuries like Saquon Barkley. The end of the day, the Giants have somewhat built their team around him. It would almost be crazy to not pay him at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I'll always stand up for the players in these situations, and especially the running back. So I wish him the best.
Yeah. Tyreek Hill says he could become the first 2,000-yard wide receiver. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think he has this skill and the ability to, especially because he's such a deep threat with his speed. He can rack up yards in a hurry. It's a little bit tough with him, splitting targets in that offense with Waddle. So, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. No one has ever got 2,000 receiving yards. The last guy who came closest was Calvin Johnson, who was I think 1,937 yards or something. He was less than 100 yards away. But Calvin Johnson was the only receiver on that team. Tyreek Hill has the ability to do it, but he's not the only receiver on that team. So I don't think he'll do it.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson would be my bet as well. I'm shocked he didn't. But with Tyreek Hill, I will say this. He had 1,710 yards last year.
Did he have that many? Wow. Okay.
1,710 yards. Yeah, Jalen Waddle is there, but you can also make the case that helps him. Helps him see more one-on-ones and less over-the-top help than he would without him. You can also make the case that Tua Tagovailoa, while I don't think he's the best quarterback, he's clearly better than the backups that were on the Miami Dolphins who were thrown to Tyreek Hill, 3-4 games out of the year at least? 5 games? How many games did Tua play in? So if you want to take the look from Tyreek Hill, he's saying, hey, I got 1,700 yards, and I didn't even have my QB throw me the rock the majority of the time. I don't think it's actually that much out of the equation.
Well, as we established last week, Tua Tagovailoa is the 5th best quarterback in the NFL.
No, according to you. According to a dude who does not know ball. Non-ball knower. The only balls he knows are the balls behind his head.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, no, I don't think Tyreek Hill could do it. But I didn't know he had that many yards last year. That is kind of shocking to me. So maybe with a full season with Tua, maybe he can.
Yeah, he averaged 14.4 yards a reception. He had 119 total receptions.
That's crazy. I'm curious what his numbers are when Tua was out.
Just here. He was so incredibly good. So I think it's possible. Don't think it's likely. But again, does he get 290 more yards if Skylar Thompson isn't the dude throwing him the rock I don't think it's out of the equation, out of the question. Let's get into it. Let's do our defensive positional rankings, starting with the defensive line. Ian, what do you have?
All right, I'll start with number 1. I'll go TJ Watt, a guy who ran into some injury issues last year, only played in 10 games. The year before that, he was Defensive Player of the Year with 22.5 sacks. The year before that, he led the NFL with 15 sacks. He was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. The year before that, third in Defensive Player of the Year voting. So TJ Watt, if he's healthy, I think is the best defensive player in the NFL. Still made the Pro Bowl last year, even though he only played in 10 games. So I'll go TJ Watt for number 1.
Yeah, I'll go TJ Watt 1, 2. TJ Watt is just unreal. I mean, think of the Watt family. How JJ Watt at one point was the best edge rusher in the NFL. TJ Watt now the best edge rusher in the NFL. And then I'll throw in just for fun a fullback in the NFL. That's pretty damn cool.
That's insane.
Congrats to them. Good genes.
Are they the most? They got to be up there for the most current athletic, like brother sister group in sports history right now, or at least current sports.
You had Jason and Travis, obviously was talked about a lot this year. You have Peyton and Eli. I wouldn't say athletic, but it's tough to disagree with Peyton and Eli Manning with the amount of Super Bowls they won and stats they put up at such an important position.
I'll throw one. Nelly Korda, Jessica Korda, both best golfer, two of the best golfers on the LPGA, and their brother, Sebastian Korda, one of the better tennis players in the world.
Ooh, that's a good one. What about the Molinas? Yachty, Benji, and Jose.
Sure.
What's that? Weren't they all brothers? I'm pretty sure. 3 brothers, and they all caught in the MLB at the same time.
Yeah, there you go. That's insane.
That has to be up there. All right, who do you have at 2?
All right, number 2, I have Aaron Donald. A little bit of a step back last year, obviously, so I was hesitant to put him at number 2. Maybe he has lost a little bit of a step, but I still just can't put anyone else there just because of his body of work. I mean, it's so hard to dominate as a defensive tackle and to really get a lot of stats as a defensive tackle, because really, if you're a good defensive tackle, what you should do is draw double teams. And then even if you don't rack up the stats, then at least you're drawing double teams and opening things up for the rest of the defensive line. Aaron Donald drew double teams almost every play and still racked up unbelievable stats. So yeah, he took a bit of a step back last year. So if you don't want to put him at number 2 or number 3, I would understand, but his body of work is so good. I'm willing to look past maybe one not so great season, especially with how the Rams played. Maybe he comes back this next year a little bit stronger. So I'll still go Aaron Donald number 2.
Yeah, just based on last year, he did take a slight step back. Again, if he all of a sudden reclaims form as the best defensive player in the NFL, I would not be shocked. I love Aaron Donald. Again, he's already a clear-cut Hall of Famer. The point is, though, we're not looking at past accomplishments. We're trying to project what's he going to look like right now in 2023. I have him just down just a little bit, just down this list a little bit. So at number 2, Micah Parsons. Yeah. Micah Parsons is unreal, man. What he can do, the impact he has, you take him away from that Cowboys defense, they're not good. I mean, they're not. They're fine. But with Micah Parsons, it's a whole different team. Micah Parsons, he makes that defense go. He is so versatile. He can do everything. Micah Parsons, to me, is the second best defensive player in the NFL. Defensive lineman in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think he finished second defensive player of the year voting. I will say one thing that Parsons on my list, obviously, he's down a little bit just because he didn't finish the season as strong as I would have liked to see. He only got, in his last 6 games, only got a sack and a half. But like the first 2/3 of the season, like 2 sacks, like he was a sack monster. He slowed up a little bit in the last 6 games of the season. So I'd like to see a full 17-game season body of work from him for him to crack my top 2 or 3. But he's on my list.
You have a 3.
I have the sack leader from last year at number 3. I don't know how you could rank Nick Bosa any lower than number 3, considering he led the NFL in sacks last year by 2.5. 18.5 sacks. The next closest was Myles Garrett with 16.
I have Nick Bosa at 4. Okay. Ooh. So Nick Bosa is 1 lower. Chris Jones is at 3. Chris Jones, and I have the stats to back it up, so get ready for this one, pal.
All right.
Who was the highest graded interior defensive lineman in the NFL last year?
I'm going to guess Chris Jones. It
was Chris Jones.
Yep.
He was the highest pass rush at 92.2, highest overall at 92.3. He wasn't a slouch in run defense as well, grading out at 80.7 according to PFF. I mean, Chris Jones, there's a reason why he was top 3 in, defensive MVP voting. Chris Jones is an animal. And again, at this point, I think he's the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Again, Aaron Donald has the better career. I'm not disagreeing with you there. I get what you're saying. But what I saw last year was Chris Jones was better last year than Aaron Donald was. Not by a lot, but it was Chris Jones. And so for being the best interior defensive pass rush in the NFL, I'm going with Chris Jones 3, Bosa 4.
Yeah, I mean, I do like to tease it because obviously he's a Chiefs guy, but I mean, at the end of the day, I won't argue too much. Yeah, he was probably the best interior defensive lineman last year, although PFF did rank his coverage last season at just a 64, his one snap that he played in coverage. So I don't know, big hole in his game. They got to watch out for that next year. Maybe opposing offenses can expose that. But no, yeah, he's not in my top 5. He probably could be. He'd probably come in at number 6 for me. So yeah, I won't argue too much.
All right. Who do you have at 4 for you?
I have Myles Garrett, number 4, who was tied for second in the NFL with sacks with 16, with Hassan Reddick. I think he's kind of getting underrated somehow for the Browns. I don't really know why, but not many people talk about just how good Myles Garrett is. And if we're talking PFF rankings, they actually ranked him as the best edge defender in the NFL last year with a ranking in 92.5, one spot above Micah Parsons. So yeah, I'll slot in Myles Garrett there.
So I am going to be very lame, and I apologize in advance. I know this is just absurd and I'm being unfair, but I have 5A, 5B, and 5C because I couldn't figure out who to go with. It's Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, and Max Crosby.
Maybe what we should have done was to do interior and edge.
Yeah, we probably should have done that.
Yeah, to toss all defensive linemen in the same group maybe wasn't fair. So I will let the 5A, and 5B slide. So
thank you. It's actually 5C too, because I can't leave Max Crosby out. It's Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, and Aaron Donald. Because you look at what Max Crosby does, and he might be the most underrated edge rusher in the NFL. Myles Garrett, I think, is underrated too to an extent. But there's still a lot of talk about him. He was drafted, first overall, right? So there's still some buzz. There's not a whole bunch of buzz about Max Crosby, and all he does is produce for a horrendous team and a horrendous defense. He gets after the quarterback. He's absurd at both getting after the QB and in the run game. Max Crosby, I got to tip my cap to him, man. I'm a Chiefs guy, and this is me saying, hey, Raiders guy, you're good. Max Crosby is damn good.
Yeah, really good at stopping the run. Arguably the best run stopper amongst all these edge rushers. Because usually when you talk about edge rushers, you bring up sacks, you bring up rushing the passer. But obviously, still stopping the run is a big factor. And I would, if we're ranking the top run stoppers on the defensive line, he would probably top my list in terms of the edge guys in terms of stopping the run. So I like Max Crosby quite a bit. If I was doing a 5B and C for me would be Max Crosby and Chris Jones. So yeah, maybe we should have split it up between interior and edge.
So I'm gonna go ahead and blame you, Iain, for that.
Yeah,
is that on you? Is that fair?
Yes.
Just
also later on, we're rating just defensive backs instead of splitting it up between corners and safeties, which once I started filling out my list, I found out that was a problem too.
Yeah, this is very difficult. But you know what? That's what we do. We make the tough decisions.
Yes.
But we don't make them that tough because we allow ourselves to put 5A, B, and C. So that's what we do here on this show. We're a friend of many. All right, linebackers. What are you going with here?
Linebacker is such a fascinating position because it's kind of gone the way of, they're kind of like the running backs of the defense now. Like when I was growing up and watching football and following football, like the linebackers were the guys you talked about on defense. The Brian Urlachers, the Ray Lewis, the Terrell Suggs, I believe, an outside linebacker. Like, the linebackers were the guys that you talked about. And now, like, I was looking through the list of linebackers, like, nobody talks about these guys. So this sort of actually all the positions outside of offensive linemen, which you did last week, which I didn't really participate in, I think actually the hardest group of players to rank. So I took Roquan Smith number 1. I know I'm kind of making the same mistake I made with Aaron Donald, where maybe I'm just evaluating guys on their whole body work and not last season, because Roquan Smith, I don't think, had a fantastic year last year, but still pretty solid. I mean, 103 solo tackles, and I think he was all pro. So I'll take Roquan Smith as my number 1 linebacker.
Yeah, I can't get there. I cannot get there. I have Fred Warner as my number 1 linebacker. Fred Warner from San Fran is just so incredibly good. Yeah. Pass coverage, run stopping. Fred Warner is one of the most complete linebackers in football. I'm going Fred Warner number 1.
Yeah, and I have him number 2. So I'm not gonna complain too much about that.
I'll go Levante David number 2 for me. An incredible coverage linebacker, graded out as one of the best coverage linebackers in football. Huge fan of Levante David. So I'm going to go Levante David number 2.
I have Levante David number 3.
Wow.
So as hard of it as it is to evaluate linebackers, we're pretty close to one another so far through the first 3. So
I'm going with Matt Milano. Matt Milano.
I do not have Matt Milano in my top 5
for the Bills. He was banged up a lot last year. Matt Milano is an incredible linebacker. He does it all for the Bills. He is the guy that really is just in the middle for what they do. You hear some talk about their defensive line. You hear a lot of talk about, Tre'Davious White and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, right? But it's Matt Milano. That's the guy, in my opinion, that really sets everything up for the Buffalo Bills defense. Now, it hasn't worked in the playoffs, but in the regular season, he's a damn good linebacker. I'm going to go Milano as my number 3.
All right, my number 4, and I will mispronounce this guy's name, even though I've heard it before. Foyesade Alukun. How close did I get to that? The J.
Aluakon, I'm pretty sure.
Aluakon. Yeah, that sounds more right. Linebacker for the Jaguars. Maybe his PFF rankings aren't quite as high, but I got to give respect to the tackle leader. He led the NFL both in combined tackles last year and solo tackles. Actually, 20 more solo tackles than the next closest defender. This is all defensive positions, not just linebackers. Now, sometimes you can make the argument that is a product of a bad defense. If he's the only good player on defense, then he's going to be the guy cleaning a lot of offensive plays up. But at the end of the day, I got to give this guy respect still, even if he has a bad defense around him. You can't rack up 128 solo tackles as a less than stellar defender, in my opinion. So I will take Foyesade. How'd you say it?
Nope. This is all you now, baby.
Aluakon.
There you go. All right. I'm going with number 4, Roquan Smith. We talked about it. Roquan Smith didn't have a great year last year, but Roquan Smith is still a very, very good linebacker. I'll put him at number 4.
I'm switching my number 5.
Yeah, you
and
you definitely should.
I
see who you had on the list beforehand, and you definitely should.
All right, I'm switching my 5 to the guy who we all knew this guy was one of the best linebackers in the NFL. He went to a different team last year. I didn't realize how good of a year he had last year, maybe because he was stuck on a bad Rams team. But Bobby Wagner is ranked number 1 last year for PFF. Now, obviously, once again, PFF is not the be-all, end-all, but Bobby Wagner, number 1 ranked linebacker last year for PFF. Now, back in Seattle, so I'll put him at number 5.
Yeah. I actually have him at number 6, if you saw my little list right there. I have Demario Davis at 5. I'm a huge fan of Demario Davis for the Saints. He again does a little bit of everything: coverage, getting after the quarterback, great tackler. He's been the focal point of that Saints defense for a long time. He's kind of been the he's been the guy, man. I'm just a huge fan of Demario Davis. I love watching him play. So I have Demario Davis at 5. And if you want 5B, you got my Bobby Wagner.
I am shocked you didn't put Nick Bolton in your top 5.
I love Nick Bolton. I'm a Mizzou guy too. I told you I'm not a homer.
A Mizzou guy and a Chiefs guy, and you didn't take Nick Bolton?
I'm not
shocked.
a homer. I'm not a homer. I love Nick Bolton. He's not top 5 in the NFL. Right. Of all linebackers, no. Top 10, you might be starting to get a case for. Top 15, I'll say yes for sure. But he's not top 5. And I love Nick Bolton. Maybe he becomes that this year, though. It's possible. He's a great tackler, but
second in tackles.
Yeah, but some of the physical attributes, he's not great in coverage. And we knew that coming out of college, right? So he might be one of, if not the best tackler in football, right? But again, I can't go there if you're not good in coverage. So that's where I'm at.
I want to give an honorable mention to Tremaine Edmonds of the Bears. According to PFF, once again, take this with a grain of salt, but best coverage linebacker, but he can't stop the run. So, but in terms of coverage, Tremaine Edmonds, the best of the linebackers. Any other honorable mentions that we should give out here?
That's what I got right now. No, right. I'm going with that.
All right. What do we got? Defensive backs. And we did not split this up between corners and safeties. I have gone very safety heavy in my list. So let's dive into this. You want me to start?
You go first.
I think the best defensive back, safety, corner, no matter what you want to do, is Derwin James of the Chargers. I think he has it all. I think he can stop the run. I think he can defend the pass. He has explosion. He has a quick first step. He is all over the field. It seems like when you're watching a Chargers game, you see Derwin James more often than any other defensive player. I love watching him play. He is my number 1 defensive back. I don't care what stats say. I don't care what PFF says, which I actually don't know what they say about him. Let me see if I can find out.
They say he's fine.
They say he's fine?
They say he's good. He's top
12 out of safeties? Okay, so PFF has now lost all credibility.
Yeah. My number 1, Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner as a rookie.
Yeah.
And going now into his sophomore year is my number 1.
Number 1 defensive back in the NFL is a guy who was just a rookie, in your
correct. Opinion. You and I went back and forth. I went with cornerback heavy. I think safety is, for the most part, not quite as important as cornerback, in my opinion. Okay. I value elite corners much more than I value elite safeties. That's where my personal opinion lies. If I was building a team, I'm drafting an elite corner before I draft an elite safety. Sauce Gardner, though, man, what more can you say? Like, defensive rookie of the year, but it was also the best cornerback in the NFL last year. I don't think there's really much debate about it. So the best corner for me is going to be the number 1 defensive back.
All right. I know that we're just evaluating guys how we feel about them right now, but I just struggle with. Although I do have him on my list. I have him at number 4, and I have another former rookie at number 5. But I just struggle putting a guy number 1 who we only have 1 season of a sample size to look at. But I guess you're only as good as your last season anyways. So
I mean, what more do you want to see? That dude was locked down. He was the best defensive player on a great defense.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he is on my list. He's at number 4. Number 2 for me, though, I got Minkah Fitzpatrick.
It's a good one. I have Minkah on my list, but I'm going Darius Slay at number 2. Darius Slay is an outstanding corner, and he was the CB1 on a great defense, a historically good defense with the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Now, if you make the case that some of the reason he was so great was because they got so much pressure on the quarterback, I'll entertain it. But he was locked down, man. He made big play. That's why I call him Big Play Slay, right? He locks down opposing wide receiver ones. Now, I understand you can always point out a cornerback tape, and you'll find one where they're getting mossed. That's the life of a cornerback. You have to have a short memory. Darius Slay, in my opinion, was phenomenal last year. I think he's going to be phenomenal again this year. Darius Slay, number 2.
Yeah, and that brings me to my number 3. You just made a point about there's always going to be highlights of a guy getting mossed or a guy getting burnt, and this happens to this guy, I think, more than anyone else. So people, I think, sometimes don't think that he's as good as he is, but I'll say Jalen Ramsey. Big mouth. Sometimes it gets him in trouble, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, I have him as my number 1 corner in the NFL. So I think he's the only. I have him and Sauce Gardner 3 and 4. So those are my 2 corners on the list. Yeah. I think he gets roasted on social media a lot, and it makes people think he's not as good as he is. But Jalen Ramsey is a lockdown corner.
Yeah, I mean, he's outstanding. It's so easy. Again, it's when you talk that much smack, like you can't beat Eli Apple. Eli Apple talks that smack and then gets torched.
Right.
But his team does well, or relatively well.
And I will say one thing about Jalen Ramsey that is an underrated skill for corners, especially in today's NFL, is tackling. I think he's one of the best run stopping corners in the NFL, and that's huge with how teams run their offenses quite often. It's not as many runs in between the tackles anymore. It's a lot of motion. It's a lot of tosses to the outside. It's reverses. It's a lot of the cornerbacks are now a lot more involved in stopping the run than they used to be. So, and he's, in my opinion, the best run stopping corner. So
you and I kind of have the same thing here. 4 and 5. I went with the safeties of Minka Fitzpatrick and then Derwin James. That's where I put my top two safeties behind the top 3 corners. Some honorable mentions that were very, very hard for me was Patrick Surtain from the Broncos. I think he is outstanding. And Javarius Ward and L'Jarius Sneed. Javarius Ward with San Fran, phenomenal last year. Everyone points to that game where he got destroyed by DK Metcalf. A lot of cornerbacks, a lot of players get destroyed by DK Metcalf. Javarius Ward, again, a great tackler as well. L'Jarius Sneed for the Chiefs, just missing the cut. He's such a versatile chess piece. He took over the Tyrann Mathieu role to an extent of blitzing the quarterback. He's a great tackler for a corner. I love L'Jarius Sneed, but I couldn't quite get him top 5. I felt like that was too much of a reach, and I'm not going to be a homer.
Speaking of homer, Swiss Mr. KC in the chat says a couple of years from now, could see McDuffie being in the top 5 corners. Was great as a rookie. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, in a few years, I could see it being a top 5 corner. He graded out last year as 16th at cornerback for PFF rankings, but where McDuffie really thrives is he's not a big dude, but he's such a smart player. Like, I know it's easy to tell guys, use the sideline as your friend. He really did. Like, he would push guys out of bounds, force them over there when they're in the air, when they're running the routes. He's just a very intelligent player. So I do think there's something to Trent McDuffie eventually being top 5. I don't think he's going to be there this upcoming season, but maybe in the future.
My number 5 is a guy who's coming off his rookie season. Jay Ward says, are we ranking DBs? Yes, we are. Give us your top 5. I'm going to go Kyle Hamilton, number 5, which I know is a little bit of a reach. Yeah, actually, I think he only even started like 5 games last year for the Ravens, but this is a guy who is the number 1 ranked safety by PFF, but with PFF ranking Derwin James number 12, they've lost credibility in my mind. But I like this guy coming out of Notre Dame. I think he's going to have an increased role in their defense this year, and he's going to become a much more known name, I think, after this season. So I'll take Kyle Hamilton, number 5. Yeah, probably a little bit of a reach, though.
It's a little bit, but again, I think he's a really good player. I just don't think he played enough. I need to see more. And again, safeties, you have to really be making a lot of plays for me to put you in the top 5. I just think cornerback is so much more valuable. There's a reason why you see cornerbacks transition to safety. Very rarely do you see safeties transition to cornerback.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, we're doing kickers. Are we going to do a kicker ranking?
Yeah, I can come up with kicker ranking. I already know my top 2. I think number 1 we can all agree, right?
Justin Tucker.
Justin Tucker's the greatest kicker of all time.
Yes, and I don't think it's close. Like, I don't think it's close. Like, Justin Tucker, what he has done, not just the leg strength, but the accuracy. Most accurate kicker in NFL history. What did he kick? Like a 66-yarder to win it one game?
Yeah, against the Lions a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, Justin Tucker hit that one off the crossbar, right? It hit the front and went in.
I think that was against the Lions, I believe.
66 yards.
Yeah. He's the greatest kicker of all time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was Adam Vinatieri, probably, especially with the Super Bowls that he won. But, I mean, I don't think you can argue with Justin Tucker. So, if we're ranking kickers, Justin Tucker still has to be number 1. Number 2, easy. Only 2 Falcons have been listed so far in our power rankings. Kyle Pitts, a tight end. Chris Lindstrom is offensive line. The third player is Younghoe Koo.
Man.
The Falcons legend Young
Yes.
Wei Koo is the second best kicker in the NFL. I will say last year he did take a bit of a step back. The year before that, he was statistically, I think, the second best kicker in the NFL. So I'll go with my guy, Young Wei Koo. Legend.
In 2021, he was the third most accurate kicker in the NFL, field goal percentage of 93.9%. And then in 2020, which makes it even more impressive, he was the only kicker in the NFL who hit more than 93% of his field goals in those past 2 years. So he's actually been quietly. Was he with the Chargers originally?
Rookie season, he was with the Chargers. And I've read as an article or tweet thread about how bad rookie kickers always are, and they always fail with their first team and then go to his second team, and then they're super successful. And yeah, he was with the Chargers. They let him go. He was bad. Eventually, and I think he went somewhere else for maybe a game or two.
Chiefs Hall of Fame kicker Nick Lowry said the same thing. A lot of times your first stop as a kicker is difficult. It just it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of practice. It's just different. So I think there is something to that. But Young Wei Koo will be my top 5. I'll say he's 4.
All right, I'll take that.
I'll say he's 4. No, because he actually is a very underrated kicker. Daniel Carlson for the Raiders is number 2.
Yep.
Daniel Carlson was how long did he not miss a kick for last year? It was something crazy. I'm gonna see what Daniel Carlson actually went last year for the Raiders, because Daniel Carlson ended up going 34 of 37. The year before he was 40 of 43. The year before he was 33 of 35. I mean, that's just consistently incredible good kicking.
He was last year he was 11 for 13 from over 50 yards, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, he was AP1, All-Pro 1 as a kicker. He was on my fantasy football team, which obviously was a good pickup by your boy. But yeah, I'll go Daniel Carlson too. Young Wei Koo, I'll go 4 with you. And just while we're in between, I might get yelled at by some people. Probably going to get yelled at by mostly Chiefs fans. Harrison Butker.
How dare you?
He was horrible last year. But was he? No, he was just average last year. Where I think people are getting this misnomer is he was injured last year. He injured himself game 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. And again, talking to, former NFL Hall of Fame kickers, right? The issue is it's hard. You're trying to play through it. You have an injury to your kicking leg or your plant leg. Those are the 2 things you need to kick. Good luck trying to make it. So he could never get fully healthy, never got his rhythm back. But where he was always clutch was game winners. He's been clutch on game winners throughout his entire career. I don't care if you miss a 33-yarder or an extra point in the regular season if I can trust you to make a 55-yarder when the game's on the line in the playoffs. I trust Butker doing that. For that reason alone, he's 3rd on my list.
Okay, so I had Tucker obviously 1, Young Wei Koo number 2. I'll take Daniel Carlson number 3. Number 4, I think I'll go Matt Gay for the Rams. Went 28 of 30 last year, 7 for 8 from beyond 50 yards. Has done it for a couple of years now. Has a Super Bowl ring. I'll take Matt Gay of the Rams at number 4.
That's really good. I would have had Evan McPherson in there, but he kind of fell off.
He did fall off a little bit.
Chris Boswell.
Chris Boswell did not have a good year last year at all. He was bad. Yeah, he was falling off a little bit. I would say Eddie Pinheiro went 33 for 35 last year. Jason Myers went 34 for 37.
For Miami, right?
Myers, I think he's Seattle. Yeah, he's Seahawks.
Who's the Miami kicker? Jason Sanders is who I was thinking of. Jason Sanders was really good 2 years ago. What did he do last year? What did old Jason Sanders do last year? Not very good.
You could also say Jake Elliott of the Eagles is up there.
Yeah.
But for my number 5, I guess I'll go Eddie Pinheiro.
Sorry.
33.
I lied. Jason Sanders was really good in 2020. The past 2 years he's been buns. Hunter says Jake Moody at 5, top kicker in the NFL draft.
Let me guess. He went to the 49ers. Wow, I'm shocked, Hunter. I'm shocked.
All right. I'm going to go you at number 5, Ian.
I could kick.
How far do you think you can make a field goal from?
I think I can make a 30-yarder. I mean, if we're just talking like just lining it up, like non-NFL setting where,
Yeah, I'm not getting over dudes jumping at me.
Right.
I'm gonna piss myself. Like
I think I can make
scream.
I'm a lefty.
Ooh, so
I think I could kick a 30-yarder.
Okay, Seabass. Sebastian Janikowski, little lefty over there.
That's all right.
I think we should do this.
All right.
I'm gonna go to a high school. You go to a high school. We're gonna line up some field goals. Are you not allowed? You're not allowed at high schools anymore. Is that what that voice?
No,
was?
I mean, it's not like New York's. It's not like downtown Manhattan like has like a ton of like high school football fields I can go to and kick a field goal at. I've never seen a football field since I moved to the city. So Hunter says he made a 40-yarder. Yeah, right. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, maybe it was on a tee. We all know the tees, the ball goes far. You're gonna have someone holding it.
Yes.
Come on. These are the rules of kicking. I don't know. You and we're going to go. You find a field, okay? Build one if you have to. Build one in the streets, okay? Get yelled at by some guy who's calling you Copernicus as you're walking by. You're going to kick it through a bodega window. I get it.
But there has to be a football field somewhere in the city.
I mean, they have football in New York, I'm assuming. Well, no, they don't, because actually football's played in New Jersey. Bunch of posers. Bunch of liars, quite frankly. But I'll find one, and we'll send a video of us kicking field goals against each other to see who can kick the longest one.
All right, deal.
All right. Before we get out of here, two things. One, if you don't do us a huge favor, go to DraftKings. DraftKings new customers bet $5 on any sport, get $200 back in bonus bets instantly, win or lose. Use promo code STB at the promo code checkout line. I don't know what you call it. What do you call it? The input. The promo code line, you know what it pops up on your screen. You put STB there. Okay, it's not a grocery store. I don't know why I tried giving a grocery store read right there. I just did, though. This offer is available for new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Please check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. Again, DraftKings, new customers, STB. What the hell is going on with you, Ian?
Nothing. I got nothing to report this week.
U.S. Open?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the U.S. Open. It's a big week for golf. I've been crushing LPGA lately with my bets. I've hit back-to-back outright bets in LPGA. So check out the Bacon Bets podcast for all my bets, my golf bets this week. It's the U.S. Open. I'll be watching that. I'm supposed to golf on Friday, so I guess it is a big golf week for me. It's even bigger golf week for you, though, I understand.
Yes, yeah, heading down to Lake of the Ozarks. Going to play in a little Ryder Cup tournament, year 2 of this specific Ryder Cup tournament. I do with some fraternity brothers from college. There's 8 of us. We go down there, draft teams. It's a 3-day, 4-round festival, if you will. We do Shamble, day 1. Best ball and alt shot, day 2. Singles, day 3.
Love it.
Going to be a lot of fun. So that we leave Thursday night rounds Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So looking forward to that. I've been practicing and training. I've been doing 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats a day. Oh, yeah, baby. We're hitting bombs down there. Either that or I'm going to be so sore I can't swing a club. Could go either way, quite frankly. And I'm putting money, Thigala, to win the US Open.
No. I hope you haven't placed that bet yet. I hope you haven't placed that bet.
I put $2.50 on it to win $250. The reason being, hear me out, he's played this course over 30 times.
That is true. He is a California guy. That is true.
He knows his course.
Max Homa has the course record, but I wouldn't bet on Max Homa either. But yeah, targeting California guys, it's not a terrible strategy. I mean, if it's $2.50, I don't hate it.
I mean, come on, that's just good odds. I mean, I'd be silly not to put money on that.
I mean, I would rather bet him like top 20 maybe. To win is a bold call, but hey, if he does it,
I'm an aggressive man.
I'll be
an aggressive man, Ian.
All right, I like it.
Who you putting money on?
I'll give one of my picks. I got money on 4 guys. I'm gonna go Tyrrell Hatton. That's the pick I'm gonna give him the show. 3rd in total strokes gained this season, behind only John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler. Very good at avoiding bogeys and scrambling. Huge at a U.S. Open course. Was 1 stroke off a playoff last week at the Canadian Open. Tyrrell Hatton, 30-1.
Love it. Love it. This was Stacking the Box podcast for Iain MacMillan. I am Sterling Holmes. Until next Tuesday, we are out.